Okay, old Firesign Theater bit that I memorized when I was stoned in high school because I thought it was hella funny. But here's how it works. Memory is associative. Like memories are stored in the brain together. Now, it doesn't always make sense how they're stored, but something can remind you of something else, and it seems off the wall, but it makes sense to the brain, and it brings it up. Okay? So as an example, with crack cocaine. Okay? Cocaine, like Robin Williams says, you know, drugs are really expensive. Dare. Okay? Cocaine is God's way of telling you you're making too much money. Cocaine. You're addicted to cocaine. Cocaine's really expensive. So you're paying your dealer. And you went to the ATM. So the sight of money and ATMs cause drug cravings. Your drug dealer drove a candy blue Mustang. Every time you see a blue Mustang or a blue car, cocaine cravings. Your dealer lives behind a house with a white picket fence. Seeing white picket fences, drug cravings. You had sex while you were on cocaine. Every time you see somebody that's sexually attracted to you, drug cravings. Looks off the wall, but your brain makes the connection. Trauma is like that. You can be triggered by anything that remotely reminds you of the trauma that you were trying to stuff. So it comes up. Right? That's how PTSD works, right? Brain is shutting down to get us through the crisis, and you remain shut down every time something happens. Like I had a brain freeze remembering that Firesign Theater bit. Right? But, okay. So it keeps coming up for you to clear it up and let it go. Multi-generational trauma, MGT. Now, in Western science, they believe in PTSD because PTSD happens to individuals. But what about people? So Native American scientists and black scientists have come up with multi-generational trauma and PSSD, post-slavery stress disorder. So, you know, the other day when we were talking about, I said, oh, so who stereotypically is drunks? And you immediately came up with Native Americans, but then you all thought about it and, oh, Irish, Germans, Russians. Well, why? Because those people have been traumatized. Sometimes by their own folks, but they have basically created this addictive use pattern that wasn't actually natural to them, but has become, as African Americans say, it was so bad it got good to them. Yes?
So like if a mom is being abused by her husband and the daughter sees it and then she gets in a relationship and she gets abused, is that
Yes,
kind of the same?
because she has basically, that's normal. That's normal relations. Okay? Yeah, right. It doesn't have to happen that way, but it does. If you don't examine what that was about, right? So, bad stuff happened to your people, and you stuffed it, forgot about it in order to survive. It keeps coming up as an unhealthy behavior for you to clear up and let it go. Now, Western psychology does not acknowledge that multi-generational trauma and PSSD exist. Because probably Western psychology would have to look at, okay, what was the trauma that caused you to come up with Western psychology? To deny that trauma exists. Things that make you go, All right, so I said this the other day. Before 1952, this was somebody prompted an email, and I got to clarify what the statement was. So before 1952, it was illegal for Native Americans to drink alcohol according to federal law. And we have stereotypes of drunken Indians way before that. Now, I've reviewed the tape, so yes, not verbatim transcript, but here's the idea and here's what I was trying to get. The reason that is because people within tribes who told native people not to drink firewater were themselves targeted by the government when the tribes wouldn't trade land for firewater. So it was basically a land grab deal. There are only one of many strategies that didn't just happen with Native Americans, it also happened with Hawaiians, et cetera, et cetera. These generally were tribes who had no alcohol technology to begin with, therefore no experience nor customs or policy about alcohol. So the idea would be, it was as if you had never even had coca plants. So remember, cocaine came from the coca plant, and in its native environment, it's not an addictive drug. Because you chew a mouthful of leaves, which are really nasty. But you endure, you chew the leaves, and it delivers a stimulant dose of the drug cocaine, roughly equivalent to a cup of coffee. Kind of, little mood elevator, but not a mood spike. To do a line of cocaine, or 2 lines of cocaine, you're doing the entire coca output of several bushes at once. Takes 1,000 pounds of coca leaf to make a pound of cocaine. So literally, this is true. If you're doing 2 lines of cocaine, you're doing more than you could ever chew in a day or a week, in an instant. Natives didn't develop that technology. So it would be like you are used to coca leaves, and then all of a sudden the government takes away your coca leaf and then gives you crack pipes and crack. You're going to develop an addiction pattern if you never had, for example, alcohol. You never had alcohol at all, and they give you whiskey instead of water? What do you think is going to happen? Right? Then this is the idea. We wanted to make the Indians extinct, that is, the government. So, being given whiskey, when you never use wine, it's going to have a bad effect on you, particularly even more when you're not allowed to practice your native spirituality, which would keep you from using the alcohol, which was, native spirituality was illegal for them to practice before 1978. Also federal law. So again, this is trauma. Okay, state-sponsored trauma. And it happened to other folks at other times with other states. That's why you have heavy drinking patterns, partially with lots of these folks. But they're not allowed to remember that because, that's all the past. We're Americans now. Yeah, no, the body remembers. The mind remembers. My people remember. So we could, look, let it go. That's all in the past. Still happening. So, if your spirituality requires that you do non-drug things to stay connected and healthy and whole, and government policies forbid you to practice that religion, imprison your spiritual people, that would forbid you from becoming addicts and alcoholics, then flood your communities with poisonous substances, after taking your children, forbidding you your language and culture, you're going to become alcoholic. All right? So it's not about blaming the victim, it's looking at actual history, actual policy that has produced the effects that we're seeing today. And it's not just them. It's all of us. Okay? Didn't just happen to Native Americans, but also Irish, Scot, German, and other European immigrants. So, country whose national anthem is that's the term, when you take a tune from one side and do it to the other, tune that exists and then put other lyrics. Contrafactum of a British drinking song is not generally going to support sobriety. Right? National anthem was a British drinking song.
Ours?
Yes. Star Spangled Banner is To Anacreon in Heaven. Look it up. It's in Wikipedia. It's a British drinking song. So, many people who have stereotypes of drunkenness have had traumatic experiences over generations. So, here's why addictions exist. certain features of certain forms of civilization require that addictions exist so that they survive. So in our world, individuals, institutions, corporations, industries, churches, religion, and government are a few examples of the major players in supporting addictions. So yes?
So you're saying that, what is it that's going to exist? The civilization, that's what requires it? Or?
Certain civilizations support addictions. It's not their intention to support addictions, but they do.
Okay, I got you.
Okay, so for example, if I'm talking with other civilizations that have used substances, so as an example, we go through prohibition, what we call prohibition. We made alcohol illegal. China went through prohibition 10 times in 3,000 years. Okay? 10 times in 3,000 years. Prohibition doesn't work as a health promotion strategy. It just creates an underground economy. The drugs become more expensive, more people get strung out behind them. Okay?
So, in other words, let's take OxyContin. Well, it's not.
Let's take OxyContin. Let's take OxyContin.
Okay.
Okay?
That's what, because the insurance company is going to stay in business, so.
The pharmaceutical company is going to stay in business.
Even on a certain level, treatment programs.
Uh-huh. Sure. Well, look, pain happens. Okay? So OxyContin is essentially pharmaceutical heroin. Now in England, they just give out heroin. Okay? We could do that too, because it's a very powerful painkiller. Right? But instead, what we give out is methadone. Or OxyContin, not because that those are necessarily more effective than heroin, but because we've made heroin illegal because of the history. I might, just for your edification, do the blind drug test at some point. Not prepared to do it now. I usually do it with the pro class. The reason I do it with the pro class is we are paid to look at policy and try and change it. That doesn't mean civilians can't change policy, but it means talking about like the history. So yeah, did you know that marijuana was a pharmaceutical drug? It was a legal pharmaceutical drug. And here's how it was made illegal. Okay, it was treating cancer, treating pain, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The top drug cop, Harry Jacob Anslinger, testified before Congress that, and I'm quoting, my source is Pipe Dream Blues. It's a book by Clarence Luzanne. Talks about the history of racism and drug policy in the United States. So this is congressional testimony because Clarence worked for the Congressional Black Caucus and had all that data going back to the founding of the country. Harry Jacob Anslinger testified before Congress that, quote, coloreds with big lips induce white women to have sex using jazz music and marijuana.
Wow.
Okay, I'm a jazz musician. I have used marijuana and jazz as a seduction technique, but you know, she kind of has to like you first. So, wow, this is what you're basing drug policy on? So there's like 38 legal drug preparations, and now that leads to the passage of the Marijuana Tax Act, which doesn't actually make those preparations illegal, but it places a tax on them so they become more expensive so that, you know, the drug companies can now use other, you know, oil-based derivatives to make the pharmaceuticals, even though they're the same drug companies that have marijuana preparations. Huh. Okay, so racism is drug policy? You serious? Really? Not the science? Not, you know, there are marijuana overdoses happening? No, nothing like that. That's why it's illegal. Okay? So when I have clients, because, you know, I have to be on the side of the law, would you rather treat your pain with OxyContin on top of, you know, patches of a stronger opiate drug, which will make you physically addicted and the withdrawal is like really nasty? Or would you rather have a cannabis edible? Okay, I mean, detoxing from a marijuana edible, which is only legal right now in Colorado to make them. Detox from marijuana edible or OxyContin? Which should I recommend? Well, I can't recommend it at all in this state because we don't have dispensaries or any of that kind of stuff. So I'm just saying, look, it was once a pharmaceutical. Use 21st century science to figure out what we need to do to find out. Yeah, because people are smoking weed and they're driving, and okay, if that's a danger, let's come up with an intoxication standard and a field sobriety test, just like alcohol. Because people are impaired driving with OxyContin and alcohol. Right? You can still get it, you know, driving under the influence using pharmaceutical. Who is first?
I don't know.
Okay. Go ahead.
So like I never hear anything bad about smoking weed. Like I don't hear about detox, I mean like the worst is somebody driving.
Yeah.
But everything else, you know what I mean? Like I don't understand why it can't be legal again.
There are powerful forces keeping it illegal, among them marijuana growers. Because, again, just as we learned in Prohibition, an illegal drug makes people money. All right? If the marijuana growers are going to profit more by keeping it illegal, they will actually lobby and pay, not that they lobby, but they'll pay money to keep it illegal. If law enforcement, because there are law enforcement officers that say, look, we want to deal with real crime, this ain't a crime. Our economy is being supported by this, blah, 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 blah. But, a lot of people are going to prison because of drug stuff around marijuana and other things, too. There's a whole prison industrial complex. And there's people that don't necessarily understand the science. Yeah. The science is not driving the policy. Prejudice is often driving the policy. But it is an addictive drug. There's no way around that.
Oh, yeah, but...
No question about that.
Is it really?
Yeah, sure.
Can you OD on
anything that makes you feel good is going to be addictive, right? Now, it doesn't mean that you can't withdraw from it and stop using. It doesn't mean the withdrawal will kill you. I mean, yeah, overdosing, I think you'd have to eat a kilo all at once. That's not going to happen. Right. So, yeah. Get questions?